All characters and events described in this story are fictitious. Any similarities with real people or situations are purely coincidental. Please do not judge strictly. Every author was once a beginner. Write in the comments what city you are from and where you listen to this audio version. Don't forget to like, share your life experiences, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next exciting story. Michael Crow leaned back in his chair, wiping his hands on his jeans. Dinner in their cozy Omaha dining room was as familiar as the creaking of the floorboards underfoot. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, everything Emily liked. He glanced at his wife, who sat opposite him, her dark hair glistening in the lamplight. 8 years of marriage, and she still made his heart beat a little faster. But today her smile was different, sharp, like the knife she held while cutting meat. "Michael," she began, putting down her fork. "We need to talk." He froze, the fork with a piece of chicken stopping halfway to his mouth. Her tone was light, almost playful, but there was something unfamiliar in it. Michael lowered his fork, feeling a chill rise in his chest. "About what?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Maybe she wanted to discuss the vacation, or the bathroom renovation he's been putting off. Emily leaned closer, her green eyes sparkling. "About us. About how to revitalize our marriage." Michael frowned. Revive? Their marriage was as strong as the concrete foundation of the house he had been building last month. They rarely quarreled, split bills, and laughed at old movies on Saturdays. Of course, life has become a little predictable: work, home, sleep, repeat. But that was life. Stable, reliable. "What do you mean?" he asked, pushing the plate away. "I lost my appetite." Emily took a sip of wine, her fingers nervously twirling the stem of the glass. "I read an article here about couples who try something new so as not to get stuck in a routine." Michael waited, feeling the tension in the room thicken, like before a thunderstorm. "For example?" His voice became lower, almost hoarse. She took a deep breath, as if about to plunge into cold water. "Exchange of partners, with another couple, just for fun." The fork fell from Michael's hand and clattered on the plate. He stared at Emily, his brain refusing to form a meaningful picture of her words. Partner exchange? His Emily, the woman who blushed when he kissed her in public, was suggesting this. "Are you serious?" he squeezed out, his face burning as if from a slap. Emily laughed, but the laugh was tight, like a string. "Michael, don't make a tragedy out of this. This is not treason. It's an adventure, safe if everything is organized correctly." He pushed the chair away, standing up so abruptly that his legs creaked on the wooden floor. "Is it safe? Emily, can you hear yourself? Are you suggesting that I sleep with someone else? What about you with another man?" She raised her hands as if trying to calm him down. "Not so rude, okay? This is not about love or betrayal. It's about pleasure, about a new experience. We're not old people, Michael. We are 35, but we live as if we were 70. Michael walked to the sink, clenching his fists. His heart was pounding like a hammer on a nail. He looked at the dirty plates, at the remains of their dinner, trying to find something familiar in this chaos. "I don't want a new experience," he said without turning around. "I miss you." Emily stood up, her steps softly rustling across the floor. She stopped behind him, her hand touching his shoulder. "I know that you love me, and I love you. That's why I suggest this. We will do this together as a couple. No secrets." He turned, looking into her eyes. Her face was open, sincere, but in the depths of her pupils there was a shadow uncertainty. "Call?" Michael couldn't make it out. "Do you really think this is normal?" he asked quietly. "That I can look at you after you? With someone else?" Emily withdrew her hand, her lips pursing. "You're taking this too seriously. It's not about feelings. It's physical, like sports or dancing." "Dancing?" He almost laughed, but the laughter got stuck in his throat. "Emily, marriage is not a dance club where you can change partners." She crossed her arms, her cheeks turning pink. "What is marriage, Michael? Live according to a schedule? Work, eat, sleep until we grow old and forget what passion is. Her words hit like a hammer. Michael turned away, looking out the window. Behind the glass was their small yard, where he once built a swing for his nephews. He remembered Emily laughing as she helped him paint the boards. Everything was simple then. When did this change? "I don't want to lose what we have," he said finally, "and you seem ready to throw it away." Emily sighed, her voice softening. "I don't want to lose anything. I want us to be alive, Michael, so that we don't just exist. Think about it. Please." He didn't answer. Silence hung between them, heavy as a concrete slab. Michael felt their world beginning to fall apart at the seams. He always thought that their marriage was built on trust, on fidelity. But now Emily was proposing to destroy everything he considered sacred and call it adventure. "I'll clear the table," he said dully, grabbing the plates. He had to keep his hands busy to keep from screaming. Emily looked at him, her eyes shining from tears or from the light of the lamp. He did not know. "Okay," she said quietly, "but we'll talk about this later." She left the kitchen, her steps fading in the corridor. Michael stood at the sink, the water rustling as it washed away the remnants of dinner. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just lost something important. Maybe not Emily, not yet, but the trust that bound them had already begun to crumble. He turned off the water and looked at his reflection in the dark window. A man with tired eyes and compressed lips. A man who always thought he knew what love was. Now he wasn't so sure. The evening dragged on slowly. Michael was sitting in the living room. The TV was muttering something about the weather, but he wasn't listening. His thoughts revolved around Emily's words. Exchange of partners. The very idea seemed alien to him, like a scene from a movie that he would turn off after 5 minutes. But Emily wasn't joking. She sat there at their table and suggested it as easily as if it was a new restaurant. He rubbed his temples, trying to figure out what had changed. Emily was always lively. The sparks in her eyes lit him up even on the hardest days. When his construction company nearly went under 3 years ago, she sat with him at night, helping him sort out the bills. She was his support, but now the same energy was pushing her into an abyss where he did not want to follow. The door creaked and Emily walked in, already in her pajamas. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and without makeup, she looked younger, almost like she did back in the days when they first started dating. Michael resisted the urge to stand and hug her. Not now, not after what she said. "Are you still angry?" she asked, sitting down on the sofa, but not too close. "I'm not angry," he replied, although this was not entirely true. "I don't understand. Where did this come from, Emily? Are you really that unhappy with me?" She shook her head, her fingers fiddling with the hem of her pajamas. "I'm not unhappy. You are the best man I know. But—" She paused, searching for words. "Sometimes I feel like we're stuck. It's as if we've already lived our entire story, and now we're just waiting for the end." Michael clenched his teeth. Her words were cutting, but he couldn't deny that there was some truth in them. Their life was comfortable but predictable. He loved the predictability of knowing that Emily would be home when he got home from work, that they would drink coffee in the morning and discuss plans. But it seems that this was not enough for her. "And you think sleeping with other people will fix that?" he asked, trying not to sound accusing. Emily shrugged, her gaze shifting to the side. "I don't know, but I want to try something that will get us out of this stagnation. I don't want to wake up in 10 years and wish we didn't take the risk." "Did you take a risk?" He leaned forward, his voice became firmer. "Emily, marriage is not a game. This is not an experiment. We made promises to each other, and I don't violate them. I didn't go silently and sleep with another man without your knowledge." She raised her head, her eyes flashed. "This is not about loving someone else. This is about us, about being open, honest." "Honest?" He stood up, unable to sit still. "Honestly means telling me you're bored and working on it together. And don't suggest that I watch you." He fell silent, unable to finish. Emily stood up too, her hands clenched into fists. "You're making a monster out of me, and I'm just trying to save us from boredom. Have you ever thought that I might be lonely, even with you next to me?" Her voice wavered, and Michael felt a pang of guilt. Alone, he worked 12 hours to make sure their company grew so they could afford this house, these dinners. But maybe he missed something important. Maybe she was right, and he didn't notice her melancholy. "If you're lonely," he said slowly, "why didn't you tell me? We could. I don't know, travel. Take a vacation. Anything but this." Emily turned away, her shoulders slumping. "Because I don't just want a vacation. I want to feel alive, Michael. And you. It's as if you've already decided everything for both of us." The words hung in the air, sharp and heavy. Michael looked at her, at the woman he loved more than anything in the world, and felt her slipping away. Not physically, she stood 2 steps away, but somewhere deeper, where their common dreams lived. "I can't give you what you ask," he said finally. "Not like that." Emily nodded, her lips trembling. "Then think about it, Michael. Think about what is more important to you, your principles, or our marriage." She went upstairs, leaving him in the silence of the living room. The TV was still blaring, now about traffic jams on the highway. Michael turned it off, and the room went dark. He sat down on the sofa, burying his face in his hands. The living room smelled of lavender from the candle Emily lit on the coffee table. Michael sat on the sofa, his broad shoulders hunched as if he were trying to hide from the light of the floor lamp. The TV was off, but the silence seemed louder than any show. It had been 3 days since that dinner when Emily had dropped her partner's swapping idea on him, and since then they had been walking through the house like a minefield. Conversations boiled down to little things: who would buy the milk, when to fix the roof. But Michael knew that the storm had not subsided, it had simply hidden. Emily walked in, her steps light, almost dancing. She wore a loose white blouse, and her hair, usually tied up, flowed over her shoulders. She looked like she was going on a date, not an evening with him in their own living room. Michael felt a pang in his chest, not jealousy, but something sharper, like a premonition. "Coffee?" she asked, putting 2 mugs on the table. Her voice was warm, but with a slight tremble, like that of a person who knows that an argument is about to begin. "I don't want to," Michael answered, looking at his hands. His fingers, roughened from working in construction, fiddled with the seam of his jeans. "It's already late." Emily sat down in the chair opposite her, her legs crossed. She took her mug, but didn't drink, just held it as if it were a shield. "Are you still thinking about what I said?" she asked, her eyes watching him carefully. Michael clenched his teeth. He hoped that she would forget that it was just a whim, like her idea last year to buy a motorcycle. But Emily is not one to back down. "It's hard not to think," he said, finally looking up. "You didn't suggest a new sofa." She smiled, but the smile was tight, like a wire. "I know it sounds unusual, but I'm serious, Michael. I want us to try." He leaned back, feeling the sofa creaking under his weight. His mind raced, trying to find words that didn't sound like an accusation. "Emily, I don't understand why you do this. We live normally, isn't it?" She put the mug on the table, her movements were sharp. "Normal is not the same as good. We are like a car on autopilot. Everything works, but where is the joy? Where is the fire?" Michael frowned. Fire? He remembered how once, about 3 years ago, they were dancing in this very living room to an old Frank Sinatra record. Emily laughed, her bare feet tangled in his, and he thought that this was happiness, not loud, not bright, but warm, like her palm in his hand. "Where is that fire now?" "If you're missing something," he said slowly, "we can fix it. Together. Without strangers." Emily leaned forward, her voice becoming quieter, but more urgent. "I don't want to fix it. I want to try something new. There is a couple I met at my last corporate party. David and Lindsay Hayes. They are open. They do this, and their marriage is stronger than many." Michael felt the blood rush to his face. His fingers clenched into fists. "Have you already discussed this with someone?" His voice was hoarse, almost alien. "Without me?" Emily raised her hands defensively. "No, no, nothing like that. I was just talking to them. They mentioned that sometimes they experiment, and I thought we could just meet, have dinner, talk." Should I talk? He almost laughed, but the laughter got stuck in his throat. About what, Emily? About how we will share each other? She rolled her eyes, her patience clearly waning. You're dramatizing everything. It's just dinner. No obligations. We'll just get to know each other and see how they live. Maybe you'll see that it's not so scary. Michael stood up, unable to sit. He walked to the window, looking out at the dark courtyard. Their yard, where he once repaired an old bench, while Emily sat next to her with lemonade and joked that he was building a throne for their future children. Everything was simpler then. Now he felt as if he was standing on the edge of a cliff. I don't want to meet some experimenters, he said without turning around. I don't need it. Emily stood up and walked over to him, her hand touching his elbow. Her touch was soft, but Michael tensed, as if she were holding a hot coal. Michael, she said quietly, almost pleadingly, I'm not asking you to agree right now. Just take a step. One dinner, for me. He turned, looking down at her. Her eyes were wide open, a mixture of hope and fear splashing in them. He hated that look. It always made him feel guilty, even when he was right. Why is this so important to you? He asked. True, Emily. Why are you so obsessed with this? She looked away, her fingers nervously fiddling with the hem of her blouse. Because I'm afraid, she said finally, her voice wavering. I'm afraid that if we don't try something new, we'll just fade away. I don't want to wake up one day and realize that we are strangers. Her words hit like a hammer on a nail. Michael felt his resolve waver. He'd always thought their marriage was a fortress, but maybe for Emily it was a cage. He didn't want to lose her. He didn't want to see her fade away, even if her idea seemed crazy to him. One dinner, he said finally, his voice as heavy as gravel. But that's all. I don't promise anything more. Emily beamed, her smile as bright as the sun after the rain. She hugged him, her arms wrapped around his waist. Thank you, she whispered, burying her face in his chest. You won't regret it. Michael hugged her back, but his arms were wooden. He felt her warmth, heard her breathing, but one question was spinning in his head. What if he already regrets? He looked over her head at their living room, at the photographs on the wall, at the threadbare carpet, at the life they had spent 8 years building. This life seemed quite full to him. But for Emily, it looks like she was just the beginning. Later, after Emily went to bed, Michael remained in the living room. He sat in the dark, looking at the empty mug that she never finished. His thoughts were tangled like wires on an old construction site. He tried to remember when Emily started to change. Maybe it was after her promotion last year, when she began to go to corporate events more often, returning with sparkling eyes and stories about new people. Or after they decide to put kids off for a couple more years to focus on their careers. He didn't know. But somewhere along the way their rhythm had lost track, and now she was pulling him into a dance he didn't want to dance. He took out his phone and opened his calendar. Emily had already added dinner with Hayes 2 days later at a restaurant on the other side of town. Michael stared at the recording, his finger hovering over the delete button. He could cancel everything right now. Tell her it's a mistake. But then she will look at him with that look, a mixture of disappointment and reproach, and he will again feel like a person who did not live up to her expectations. Michael put the phone down and rubbed his face. He was a builder. He knew how to repair foundations and strengthen walls. But how do you fix a marriage that is cracking not because of quarrels, but because one wants to run and the other wants to stand still? He didn't know. But for Emily's sake, he agreed to this dinner. Not because I wanted to, but because he was afraid that rejection would destroy them faster than her crazy idea. He stood up and turned off the candle, the lavender scent still hanging in the air. As he climbed the stairs to his bedroom, he felt each step reverberate in his chest, as if he was walking not to his wife, but to something that could change them forever. The trendy restaurant in downtown Omaha was buzzing. The dark wood walls reflected the soft light of the crystal chandeliers, and the smell of truffle oil and grilled meat hung over the tables. Michael felt out of place. His jeans and polo shirt seemed too simple among the silky dresses and jackets. He fiddled with a napkin while Emily, sitting next to him, adjusted her earrings, her smile shining as if they had come to a party and not to a minefield. Sitting opposite them were David and Lindsay Hayes. David, with perfectly coiffed hair and a white-toothed smile, looked like a talk show host. His dark blue suit fit impeccably, and when he ordered wine, his voice sounded slightly hoarse, as if he was used to being listened to. Lindsay was different, reserved, with brown hair pulled back into a low bun and eyes that rarely lifted from her plate. Her black dress was elegant but modest, and Michael caught himself thinking that she didn't seem to be happy about this dinner either. "Well, Michael," David began, leaning back in his chair as the waiter poured the wine. "Emily said you build houses. It must be cool to create something with your own hands." Michael nodded, trying to look relaxed. "Yes, mostly residential buildings, sometimes commercial projects. Nothing special, just work." "You're being modest," Emily intervened, her hand resting on his elbow. "His company built half the new neighborhoods in Omaha. He's like a dream architect." Michael felt his cheeks burn. Emily had always been good at exaggerating, but today her enthusiasm seemed too bright, like a neon sign. "Not exactly," he muttered, reaching for a glass of water. He decided to leave the wine. His head was already cloudy. David laughed. His laugh was loud, filling the space. "I love guys like this. They get the job done and don't brag. What about you, Lindsay? Tell them what you do." Lindsay looked up, her fingers hovering on the stem of her glass. "I'm a school psychologist," she said quietly but firmly. "I work with teenagers. I help them understand themselves." "This is cool," Emily said, her voice full of delight. "It must be so interesting to look into their heads." Lindsay smiled slightly, but her eyes remained serious. "Sometimes. But more often it's just listening. They themselves know what they need if you give them a chance." Michael nodded, feeling unexpected sympathy for her. She seemed like a person who didn't like small talk. Unlike David, who was already telling some story about his latest sales deal, waving his arms like a conductor. Michael listened with half an ear, his thoughts swirling around the purpose of this dinner. Emily insisted that it was just an acquaintance, but her sparkling eyes and the way she laughed at David's every joke told a different story. "Okay," David said as the waiter took away the empty appetizer plates. "Let's get down to business. Emily mentioned that you guys are thinking about expanding your horizons." Michael froze, his fingers clutching the napkin under the table. My heart pounded like a hammer on a nail. He glanced at Emily, hoping she would stop it, but she just smiled, her hand squeezing his elbow a little tighter. "Well," she began, her voice light, but with a hint of nervousness, "we're just open to new ideas." "Really, Michael?" He felt all eyes turn to him. David leaned forward, his smile almost predatory. Lindsay looked into her glass, but her shoulders tensed. Michael opened his mouth, but the words stuck. We just came for dinner," he said finally, trying to smile. "I'm not sure we're ready for horizons." David laughed, brushing it off as if Michael had said a joke. "Oh, come on, don't be so serious. We're not in court. It's just a conversation. Lindsay and I have been dabbling in this kind of stuff for a couple of years now, and it's like a breath of fresh air." Michael felt the blood rush to his face. He glanced at Lindsay, expecting her to object, but she just nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. "It works for us," she said quietly, but without much enthusiasm. Emily leaned closer to the table, her eyes sparkling. "Do you see, Michael? It's not something strange. People do this, and their marriages only get stronger." Michael clenched his teeth, his fingers clenched into a fist under the table. He wanted to get up, leave, tell them all that this was madness. But Emily looked at him with such hope that he felt like a traitor just thinking about it. "I don't know," he said, trying to sound neutral. "This is not mine." David raised his eyebrows, and his smile widened. "Not yours? Come on, Michael. You are a man, not a monk. Don't you sometimes want to shake things up? Emily obviously doesn't mind, does she, Em?" Emily laughed, her cheeks turning pink. "Well, I think this could be fun. If everyone agrees, of course." Michael felt the floor disappear from under his feet. Funny, did his wife, the woman with whom he shared his bed, his dreams, his life, call it fun? He looked at her, trying to find something familiar in her face, but all he saw was a stranger who laughed at David's words as if they were old friends. "Wait," he said, his voice becoming firmer. "We said it was just dinner. Nobody promised anything." Emily turned to him, her smile dimming slightly. "Michael, relax. We're just talking. Nobody forces you." "Exactly," said David, raising his glass. "But sometimes it's worth trying something new. Lindsay and I can show you how it works. No pressure. Just a test." Michael felt his throat tighten. Try? The word sounded dirty, like a stain on their marriage. He glanced at Lindsay, hoping she would intervene, but she remained silent, her fingers fiddling with the edge of the tablecloth. "I think," Emily began, her voice full of enthusiasm, "that we could try. Well, once. To understand if it is ours." Michael turned to her so sharply that the chair creaked. "Emily," he said quietly but forcefully, "are you serious?" She met his gaze, her eyes were firm, but a shadow of doubt flashed through them. "Yes, Michael, I'm serious. This is not treason. It's an experience. We can trust each other, right?" He opened his mouth, but no words came. Trust? He trusted her for 8 years. Trusted her when she was late at work, when they argued about money, when life got hard. But this, it wasn't trust. It was betrayal wrapped in beautiful words. David raised his glass, his voice cutting through the silence. "To new horizons. What do you say, Michael? Are you with us?" Michael looked at him, at Emily, at Lindsay, who was still silent. His heart was pounding as if he were running a marathon. He wanted to say no, wanted to leave, but Emily looked at him with such confidence that he felt like a coward. His silence hung in the air, heavy as smoke. "He'll think about it," Emily said for him, her hand squeezing his palm under the table. "Really, Michael?" He didn't answer. His throat was dry as the desert. He looked at his untouched steak, at the glass of wine he never drank, and felt something inside him break. Not marriage, not yet. But the belief that he knew Emily, that he knew their love, was coming apart at the seams. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. David joked, Emily laughed, and Lindsay occasionally made quiet comments. Michael was silent, nodding when they expected an answer from him. He felt like a spectator in a performance that he did not want to watch. When they finally left the table, Emily hugged David and Lindsay, her voice ringing with excitement. "That was great," she said as they walked to the car. "They're cool, aren't they?" Michael opened the door, his movements mechanical. "Yes," he said without looking at her. "Cool." He sat behind the wheel, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Emily chatted about the restaurant, about the wine, about how funny David was, but her words sounded like noise. Michael looked at the road, but saw only her face at the table shining, alien. He was silent, and this silence was louder than any words. It spoke of pain, of betrayal, of the fact that their marriage, which he considered unbreakable, was now hanging by a thread. Michael's pickup raced through the night streets of Omaha, its headlights picking out pieces of asphalt strewn with leaves. The cabin smelled of leather seats and remnants of cologne, but the air was heavy, like before a thunderstorm. Michael was clutching the steering wheel, his jaw tense as a steel cable. The dinner with David and Lindsay Hayes still burned in his mind. Emily's laugh, David's cheeky innuendos, her hand squeezing him under the table as she said, "We could try." These words swirled around in his head like a rusty nail driven into his heart. Emily sat nearby, looking out the side window. Her fingers fiddled with the strap of her purse, but her face was calm, almost dreamy, as if she had just left a party and had not set their marriage on fire. The silence in the car was deafening, but Michael could feel the rage bubbling inside him, ready to burst out. "Do you even understand what you did?" he said finally, his voice low, almost a growl. He didn't look at her, afraid that her face, her beautiful, familiar face, would break his resolve. Emily turned, her eyebrows raised. "Did you do it?" "Michael, I was just talking. It was a dinner, not a contract." Did you talk? He turned the steering wheel sharply, turning onto a quiet street. You said we would try. Right there, in front of those people. Without me. Without my consent. She rolled her eyes, her voice becoming harsher. Oh, don't start. I didn't sign us up for anything. I just kept the conversation going. You saw how open they are. It was inspiring. Michael slammed his hand on the steering wheel and the truck swerved slightly. Inspiring. Emily, you sat there and talked about sleeping with another guy like you were choosing a menu. Was I supposed to smile and nod? Emily straightened up, her cheeks flushed. Don't overdo it. This is not about sleeping with someone. It's about experience, about us as a couple. We can set rules, health tests, different rooms, everything is fair. It's not cheating if we both agree. Michael stopped at a red light, his breathing heavy as if he were dragging a concrete block. He turned to her, his eyes burning. Rules. Emily, can you hear yourself? Do you want me to agree to another man touching you, my wife, because it's fair? You are mine. I'm yours. This is a marriage, not a damn exchange club. She recoiled as if from a slap in the face, but quickly recovered, her voice becoming cold. Yours? Michael, I'm not your property. I'm your wife, and I want our marriage to be a vibrant one, not just a mortgage bill. Have you ever thought that I might be bored? Boring? He almost laughed, but the laugh was bitter, like vinegar. If you're bored, we can go to Mexico, go diving, and even fly to the moon. But I won't share you with some guy in a suit who thinks he can buy my wife a glass of wine. Emily crossed her arms, her lips pressed into a thin line. You're simplifying everything. David and Lindsay are happy because they are not afraid to try. And you're like an old man who's afraid to leave the house. I want to live, Michael. I want to feel wanted, and not just a wife who cooks dinner. Her words hit like a hammer. Michael felt his chest tighten. Desired. He looked at her every morning as if it were a miracle, her disheveled hair, her laughter when he fried pancakes. He worked 12 hours so that she could buy these dresses that suited her so much. And now she says that's not enough. Aren't you desirable? He said quietly, his voice trembling with pain. Emily, I look at you and think that I'm more lucky than I deserve. But is this not enough for you? Do you need another man to feel alive? She looked away, her fingers nervously fiddling with the strap. It's not about you, Michael. You're good. You reliable. But I want more. I want passion, adventure. And I thought you'd want this with me. Passion. He hit the steering wheel with his fist. The traffic light changed to green, but he didn't move. Passion is when I come home and see you. When we argue, make peace, build a life together. And not when I give you to some David so that He fell silent, unable to finish. The very thought of another man touching her was like a knife in her chest. Emily leaned closer, her voice softer but more urgent. Michael, this is not about love. It's physical. We can do this safely, with rules. No one will get hurt. Why can't you at least think? Because I don't want to share with you. He shouted, his voice breaking the silence of the cabin. You are my wife, Emily. I don't want anyone else to see you, touch you, know you the way I know you. These are not rules. These are oaths. We promised each other, or did you forget? She fell silent, her eyes sparkling in the light of the street lamps. Michael waited, hoping that she would back down, that she would say it was a mistake. But instead, she straightened up, her chin lifted. I haven't forgotten. But I don't want our vows to become chains. I want freedom, Michael. And I thought you loved me enough to give it to me. Michael felt his heart skip a beat. Freedom? Did she call it freedom? He looked at her, at the woman he had loved for 8 years, and saw a stranger. Her eyes were full of determination, almost obsession, as if she had already stepped into this new world and was waiting for it to follow. Freedom, he repeated, his voice empty. This is not freedom, Emily. This is destruction. She opened her mouth to protest, but he raised his hand to stop her. Enough. I don't want to hear it anymore. Not today. Emily leaned back in her seat, crossing her arms. Okay, she said coldly. But you can't just shut down and pretend this conversation didn't happen. I won't back down. Michael didn't answer. He stepped on the gas, and the pickup lurched forward, tires rustling on the asphalt. The silence returned, but now it was different, not tense, but dead, like a desert. He looked at the road, but saw only her face at dinner, her laugh, her words. We could try. She took his silence for agreement, as if his pain, his disgust meant nothing. And in this silence, he realized, was his mistake. He didn't shout, didn't stop her, didn't say a firm no. And now the crack between them was wider than he could repair. They pulled up to the house, and Emily walked out without saying a word. Her heels clicked on the path, and the door slammed. Michael remained in the car, his hands still gripping the steering wheel. He looked at their house white, with a neat lawn, with windows where warm light burned. This house was their fortress, their dream. But now he felt like a stranger, as if the walls he had built were no longer his. He turned off the engine and leaned back in his seat. His chest hurt, as if someone had torn out a piece of his heart. He knew this argument wasn't over. Emily would not back down. She was stubborn, like a storm that breaks everything in its path. But he won't give up either. She was his wife, his love, his life. And he will not give her up, neither to David, nor to her dreams of freedom. But how to keep it without losing yourself? This question hung in the dark, and Michael did not know the answer. Michael's office smelled of dust and freshly cut wood. The narrow window let in the gray morning light, illuminating the blueprints on his desk and the coffee mug that said "Best Boss" that his team had given him 2 years ago. Michael sat in an old leather chair, his fingers clutching a pen, but he was not writing. His gaze was glued to the phone, where a missed call from Emily was blinking. Today was the day he'd been dreading all week, the day she wanted to try partner swapping with David and Lindsay Hayes, and he knew that he could no longer remain silent. The last few days have been like walking on broken glass. Emily acted as if their argument in the car was nothing, chatting about restaurants and dresses she would wear to Hayes. Her eyes glowed, as if she had already lived in this new world, where marriage was a game and vows were a convention. Michael felt like his world was collapsing. Every night he lay awake, imagining her with David, and the thought was like a knife stabbing again and again. He couldn't let that happen. Not his Emily, not their life. He stood up, his boots squeaking on the wooden floor. There was an old photograph on the wall of his parents, smiling on the porch of their Iowa home. A father with calloused hands like Michael, and a mother with kind eyes that always saw right through him. They lived 30 years together, through bankruptcy, illness, and loss. Their marriage was simple but unbreakable, built on loyalty and respect. Michael remembered his father once saying, "Love is not about what you take, son. It's about what you protect." These words now burned in his chest like a beacon. He grabbed the phone and dialed Tom, his high school friend who became a lawyer. "Michael." Tom's voice was hoarse, as if he had just woken up. "Damn, do you know what time it is? 7 in the morning. "I need some advice," Michael said, his voice as hard as concrete, urgently. Tom coughed, and the rustling of sheets was heard in the receiver. "What happened? Contract problems? Or did your guys fill the foundation with the wrong solution again? Not work?" "Emily." Michael fell silent, his throat tightened. "I want a divorce." The word fell like a stone into a pond. The silence on the other end was deafening. "Divorce?" Tom asked, now fully awake. "Wait, are you serious? You and Emily are like, damn, like a model for postcards. What's happened?" Michael walked to the window, looking out at the empty parking lot. "She wants something else. He wants us too." He clenched his teeth, unable to speak. "She wants to share our bed with other people. With some couples. I can't, Tom. I can't look at her, knowing that she wants it." Tom whistled. "Oh my God, Michael. This is wild. Have you spoken to her? Maybe she just, I don't know, read some magazines." He spoke. "She doesn't listen." Michael clenched his fist. His voice became harsher. "She has already decided everything. Today they plan to start. I won't let this happen. Not with my wife." Okay," Tom said, his tone becoming businesslike. "If you are sure, I can prepare the documents." "But Michael, divorce is no joke. Are you sure you want this? Maybe give yourself some time." Michael closed his eyes, remembering Emily at dinner, her laugh, her words, "We could try." She did not see his pain, did not hear his screams. She had gone so far that he could no longer catch up with her. "I'm sure," he said. "Start. I'll come over in an hour." He hung up, his heart pounding. Divorce. The word was as heavy as a hammer, but it brought strange relief. He didn't want to lose Emily, but he couldn't keep her if she had already chosen a different path. His parents taught him to stand up for what he believes in, and he believed in their marriage, in their vows, in their love. If Emily didn't want it, he wouldn't cling to an empty shell. By noon, Michael was sitting in Tom's office, a small room with the smell of paper and ink. Tom, in a wrinkled shirt, was leafing through documents, his glasses sliding down to the tip of his nose. "Here," he said, pushing the folder towards him. "Application for divorce. Without division of property, if you agree. But, Michael, you need to talk to Emily. If she doesn't agree, it may take longer." Michael took the folder, his fingers trembling. "She won't agree, but I can't wait. She's already gone, Tom. Maybe not physically, but her heart is no longer with me." Tom leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin. "Damn, man. I thought you were impenetrable. Remember how you said at the wedding that it was your home? What's happened?" Michael looked at the folder, at his name printed in black letters. "She wants another house. With other people, and this is not a home, this is already a hostel. I can't live in something like this." Tom nodded, his eyes full of sympathy. "Okay, sign here, and, Michael, if you change your mind, just tell me. I'm in no hurry." Michael took the pen and signed, his signature as sharp as an axe blow. He felt something inside him breaking, but it wasn't a weakness. It was power, the power to say, enough is enough. He stood up, clutching the folder. "Thank you, Tom. I'll figure it out myself." Evening fell over Omaha like a dark blanket. Michael parked the pickup in front of the Hayes house, a large, modern building with huge windows and a perfectly manicured lawn. Light poured from the windows, music was playing inside, soft, but with a hint of something playful. Michael felt his stomach tighten. Emily was there, inside, ready to cross the line he couldn't cross. He grabbed the folder from the passenger seat and got out, his boots crunching on the gravel. David opened the door. His shirt was unbuttoned at the top button, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His smile was wide, but his eyes were wary. "Michael," he said, too loudly, "glad you came. Emily is already here, you know. She's the real star of the evening." Michael gritted his teeth, his fist clenching the folder. "Where is she?" he asked, his voice as cold as steel. David raised his eyebrows, but stepped back to let him through. "In the living room. Relax, man, it's just a party." Michael walked past, ignoring him. The living room was spacious with white sofas and a glass table. Lindsay sat in the corner, her dress dark blue and her eyes avoiding him. Emily stood by the fireplace, wearing the red dress he had given her for her anniversary. She was laughing. Her hand lay on the shoulder of some man whom Michael did not know. Seeing him, she froze, her smile faltered. "Michael," she said, her voice a mixture of surprise and irritation. He stepped forward, his heart pounding, but his voice was firm. He picked up the folder, his eyes never leaving her face. "Do you want to change, Emily? Change as much as you want, but not with me." Emily frowned, her hand falling from the man's shoulder. "What? Michael, what are you talking about? It's just an evening. We're just—" "Enough," he snapped, his voice like a hammer blow. "I won't be your spectator. Here are the divorce papers. Sign when you're ready. But I'm leaving. Right now." The room froze. Lindsay gasped, her glass clinking on the table. David stepped forward, his smile fading. "Hey man, no drama. It's just—" "Shut up," Michael snapped, turning to him. "It's none of your business. This is between me and my wife." He looked at Emily again, his eyes full of pain but determination. "Or whoever you want to be now." Emily turned pale and her lips trembled. "Michael, you can't. We don't. It's just an idea. You can't just pick up and leave. You chose Emily, and it's not me. He threw the folder on the table, the papers rustling like autumn leaves. Emily looked at them, her eyes filled with tears, but she did not move. Michael waited, hoping she would say something to stop him. But she was silent, and this silence was louder than any words. He turned and walked out without looking back. The door slammed behind him. The music died down. He got into the pickup truck, his hands shaking, but inside there was a strange clarity. He made a choice. Not the one he wanted, but the one he needed. His parents were right, love is protection. And he protected what was left of his heart, even if it meant losing her. Michael's modest rented apartment smelled of fresh paint. The only window looked out onto the parking lot, where a rusty lamp flickered like a damaged lighthouse. The room was empty. A sagging sofa, a cardboard box with clothes, a mattress on the floor. Michael sat on the couch, his boots still covered in dust from the construction site. He held the phone in his hands, the screen glowing with a dozen unread messages from Emily. He didn't open them, but the headlines burned in his eyes. Are you serious? It's just dinner, Michael. You ruined everything. Each word was like a blow, but he did not respond. I couldn't. I didn't want to. It had been 2 days since he threw the divorce papers on the table in the Hayes house and left without looking back. 2 days later, he packed his bag and moved here, to this hole on the edge of Omaha, where no one knew his name. He felt like a man who had escaped from a burning house alive, but with burns that still hurt. Emily had been his home for 8 years, and now he stood on the ashes, not knowing how to build again. The phone vibrated, indicating a new call. Emily. Michael stared at the screen, his finger hovering over the reset button. He imagined her voice harsh, accusing, or perhaps pleading. Both options were unbearable. He pressed reset and threw the phone on the couch as if it might bite. Silence returned, but it was heavy, like a concrete slab. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the empty parking lot. Somewhere in the distance a car was honking, and this sound was the only thing that reminded us of life outside. Michael rubbed his face, his stubble pricking his palms. He hasn't slept well since that dinner, since Emily said, "We could try." Her face shining, alien haunted him. But the worst thing was her silence when he threw down the documents. She didn't stop him, didn't shout, didn't fight for them. And this silence said more than all her words. There was a knock on the door, sharp as a shot. Michael frowned, his heart leaping. Emily, he wasn't ready to see her. Not now. He went to the door, opened it, preparing for battle, but Joe, his foreman, stood on the threshold with a bag of beer in his hand. Joe, stocky with a gray beard, looked like a man who could build a house with just his left hand. "Damn, Michael, you live in a box," Joe said, looking around the apartment. "What is this, your new palace?" Michael forced a smile, stepping back to let him in. Temporarily. "Come in." Joe plopped down on the couch, setting his beer down on the floor. He opened 2 cans and handed one to Michael. "You look like you've been run over by a truck." "What happened? Emily made a scene again because of your late shifts." Michael took the beer, but didn't drink it. He sat down next to him, looking at the jar as if it might provide answers. "Not a change. I left her, Joe." Joe froze, his eyebrows rising. "Left? Are you serious? You and Emily are like, damn, like glue and wood. What has she done?" Michael clutched the can, the metal crunching under his fingers. He didn't want to speak, but the words rushed out like water from a cracked pipe. "She wanted to share with us, with another couple. It's as if marriage is a game of cards where you can switch players." Joe whistled, his eyes widening. "Lord, is this like in those adult films? Did she really suggest this?" "True," Michael said, his voice muffled. "And she didn't just suggest it. She was already ready. Yesterday was their evening. I came with divorce papers and said that I was leaving." Joe leaned back, rubbing his beard. "Damn it, Michael. This is tough. But you know, I couldn't either. My Lizzie once suggested a dance club, and I almost went crazy, imagining some guy twirling her around. And here, this is completely beyond the bounds." Michael nodded, his throat tightening. He remembered Emily in the red dress, her laughter in the Hayes house. She was so beautiful, so alive, and so far from him. I couldn't stay, Joe. Not after this. But he paused, his voice trembling. Damn, I still love her. Joe patted him on the shoulder, his hand heavy but warm. Love is not glue, man. She doesn't hold if someone is already vomiting. You did what you could. Now give yourself time. And for God's sake, buy a normal bed. Michael chuckled, but the laugh was bitter. He took a sip of beer, the cold bitterness easing some of the tension. Joe was right, he did what he could. But why then did this emptiness in my chest not go away? He looked at the box of clothes, at the bare walls, and felt like a man without a foundation. The next day, Michael was at a construction site where his team was pouring the foundation for a new house. The air smelled of concrete and sweat, and the sun burned my neck. He stood at the edge of the pit, checking the drawings, but his thoughts were far away. The phone in my pocket vibrated again, another message from Emily. He pulled it out, the screen flashed. You are overdramatizing everything. It was just an evening. Come back and we'll talk. Michael gritted his teeth, his finger hovering over the delete button. She didn't understand, or she didn't want to understand. He deleted the message without replying and put the phone back. Hey, boss, Joe shouted, approaching with a shovel on his shoulder. You're like a zombie today. Everything is fine. Michael wiped the sweat from his brow as he looked at the workers carrying bags of cement. Fine, he lied. It was a long night. Joe squinted, his eyes as sharp as an old dog's. Don't lie. I saw you looking at the phone. Emily, right? What does she want? Michael sighed, his shoulders slumping. She thinks I'm exaggerating, that I should go back as if nothing had happened. But I can't, Joe. Not after her. He trailed off, the words stuck in his throat. Joe nodded, his face becoming serious. You know, my sister once left her husband because he drank. She said that the hardest thing is not leaving, but the fact that you still hear his voice in your head. But you made a choice, Michael, and he is correct. You can't live with a person who wants something else. Michael looked at the pit where concrete was slowly filling the formwork. I know, but it hurts. I thought we'd be together forever, and now I'm here in this hole, and I don't know what's next. Joe patted him on the back, his smile crooked but kind. Then you build, as always. Home, life, whatever. You're Michael Crow, the man who built the company from scratch. This Emily thing, she's not the end. Just a crack in the foundation, and you know how to repair cracks. Michael looked at him, feeling the corners of his lips twitch into a faint smile. Joe was right. He was a builder. He knew how to pick up the pieces and start again. And although his heart still ached, there was something new in the pain, not just loss, but wholeness. He chose himself, his principles, his belief that marriage is about two people, not a crowd. And this was his first step. Thank you, Joe, he said, his voice quieter but firmer. Let's go and check if the guys made a mistake with the solution. Joe laughed, his voice echoing across the construction site. This is my boss, and beer in the evening is on me. Michael nodded, walking towards the pit. The sun still burned, but now it seemed less heavy. He was alone, but not broken, and for the first time in a week, he felt like he could breathe. The kitchen was icy, despite the warm light of the lamp above the table. Emily stood at the sink, her fingers clutching her empty glass as she stared at the traces of coffee Michael had left on the countertop. A week ago he was here, grumbling about the salty soup, and now he's gone, not his jacket by the door, not his heavy steps up the stairs. He left, leaving the divorce papers at the Hayes house as a challenge, and left her alone. Rage burned through her chest like a hot coal. How dare he? It was just an idea, just an evening, and he made it out to be the end of the world, as if she had betrayed him. Emily threw the glass into the sink. The glass clinked, but didn't break. She didn't betray. She wanted to save their marriage, breathe life into it, pull them out of the swamp of routine. Michael was her rock, but he was so predictable. She needed passion, freedom, something to remind her that she was alive. and he rejected her as if she were a mistake. So be it. If he wants to be stubborn, she will show him that she doesn't need his approval. He will return when he realizes what he lost, and she won't sit and wait. She grabbed the phone, her fingers trembling with anger. The message to Michael was short, sharp. "You are making a mountain out of a molehill. It was just an evening. Come back, or you will regret it." She pressed send, her heart pounding. He will read it. He must. But the phone was silent, and this silence was like a slap in the face. Emily gritted her teeth, opened a chat with Lindsay Hayes, and wrote, "Lindsay, are you home today? I want to stop by. No drama, just have fun." The answer came quickly. "Emily, of course. Come by 8. David is already waiting." Emily exhaled, her lips curling into a smile. Waiting. Fine. She will prove to Michael that she can live without his rules. It won't break. The Hayes house shone like a shop window. Glass windows, soft light, music pulsating somewhere inside. Emily stepped out of the car, her heels clicking on the path. She put on a black dress tight, with a low neckline that Michael would call too much. She didn't think about him today. Today, she was herself, bold, free, ready for anything. David opened the door, his shirt unbuttoned, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His eyes slid over her, lingering on her neckline. "Emily," he said, his voice smooth as silk, "you look like fire. Where is your sullen builder?" Emily laughed, but it was as sharp as glass. "He is busy with his principles. Today I'm alone." David grinned, his hand touching her elbow, letting her inside. "His loss, our luck. Come on in. Lindsay is already making cocktails." The living room was warm, with white sofas and a glass table covered in candles. Lindsay stood behind the bar, her dark green dress flowing like water, but her eyes as wary as a cat's. "Emily," she said, holding out the cocktail, "glad to see you. Are you okay?" Emily took the glass, her fingers clenching the cold glass. "It couldn't be better. I just want to relax. No notations." Lindsay nodded, but her gaze was intense, as if she could see the cracks Emily was trying to hide. "Understand, sometimes you just have to. Let go." David plopped down on the couch, patting the spot next to him. "Sit down, Em. Tell me what's eating you. Or did you just come for my charm?" Emily sat up, her dress stretching, emphasizing her curves. She took a sip of the cocktail, the ice burning her throat. "Maybe because of charm. Or maybe for what you love to talk about. Living without chains, right?" David laughed. His hand lay on the back of the sofa, almost touching it. "This is the attitude. Lindsay and I know how to remove chains." "Really, Linz?" Lindsay smiled, but her smile was thin, almost forced. "We found a balance. But this requires trust. Are you sure you're ready?" Emily clutched her glass, her heart pounding. Sure. She wanted this. She wanted to prove to Michael that he was wrong, that she was not his property. "I'm not one to back down," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. "I want to try. Today, without him." David leaned closer, his eyes sparkling. "Seriously, Emily, you are a hurricane. We can create a night you won't forget." Lindsay looked at her, her voice soft, but with a hint of warning. "Emily, this is a big step. Make sure you're doing this for yourself and not because of someone." Emily waved it off, her cheeks burning from the cocktail and anger. "I do this for myself. I'm tired of rules. Let's just get started." The night dissolved into fog. Cocktails flowed like a river, the music hit her temples, and Emily moved as if in a trance. David was everywhere, his hands on her waist, his lips near her ear, his laughter filling the room. Lindsay was close, her touch softer, but just as insistent. Emily let herself get lost in it, in their warmth, in their gazes, in the feeling of being wanted. They went upstairs to a bedroom with a huge bed and dim lights. Emily didn't think, didn't stop. She wanted freedom, and she took it. But when it was all over, as she lay between them, her skin was sticky with sweat and her heart was empty, like a burnt-out house. David was asleep, his hand resting heavily on her thigh. Lindsay sat by the window, looking into the darkness, her face unreadable. Emily looked at the ceiling, and instead of triumph, all she felt was cold. This was not freedom. It was nothing. This was clearly not what she expected. She wanted to feel life, but instead she felt death, the death of what was between her and Michael. She stood up, her legs trembling. She pulled on her dress without looking at David and Lindsay and went downstairs. In the living room, she grabbed her bag, her fingers shaking. Lindsay caught up with her at the door, her voice quiet. "Emily," she said, "are you okay? Do you want me to take you?" Emily shook her head, her throat tightening. "I can handle it. Thank you. For everything." Lindsay touched her arm, her eyes filled with something akin to pity. "Call if you need it, not just for this." Emily nodded but didn't answer. She walked out, the cold air hitting her face like a slap in the face. She sat in the car, looking at the dark windows of the haze, and the emptiness grew like a black hole. She wanted to prove Michael wrong, but now all she felt was shame. She slept with them, and it didn't make her free. It made her lonely. She took out her phone, her fingers trembling. She dialed Michael's number, but he didn't answer. The beeps were ear-piercing, and she left a message, her voice filled with rage. "Michael, this is stupid. You left me for nothing. It was just an evening, just an experiment. Come home, or I swear you will regret it." She hung up, but immediately called again, her voice breaking, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Michael, please. I didn't want this. I'm confused. I love you. Talk to me. Please." She threw the phone on the seat, her face wet. She wanted freedom, but now she was in a cage she had built herself. Michael was her home, her anchor, and she destroyed that by thinking she could fly. Now she was falling, and he did not answer. Emily started the car, her hands shaking. She went home, but the house was empty, like her soul. She lay down in their bed, but Michael's scent disappeared. She closed her eyes, but saw only his face full of pain as he left. She wanted him back, but knew he wouldn't come back. Michael's apartment was bare, like an unfinished house. The hum of the neighbor's TV could be heard through the thin walls, and the single lamp on the nightstand cast a yellow light on the cardboard boxes still unpacked. Michael sat on the sagging sofa, his fingers clutching a mug of cold coffee. On the table lay a folder from Tom, the lawyer, with divorce papers that needed to be signed today. His phone blinked, showing 3 new voicemails from Emily. He didn't listen to them, but he knew that there was a mixture of anger and tears, like the one she had left all week. Each message was like a nail that he refused to drive into his heart. Michael rubbed the stubble on his chin, his eyes glowing from lack of sleep. After he left the Hayes house, abandoning the divorce papers, life became strangely clear but difficult. He felt like a man who had demolished an old house to build a new one, but was still standing in a vacant lot. Emily was his foundation, his dream, but she chose a different path, a path where marriage was a game and vows were an empty phrase. He couldn't follow her. "I couldn't become a man who shares his wife with others." And yet, her absence was like a hole in his chest that he didn't know how to mend. There was a knock on the door. Michael stood up, his boots squeaking on the linoleum. Tom stood on the threshold in a crumpled jacket with a folder under his arm. "You look like crap," Tom said, walking inside uninvited. "Is this your style now? Hobo construction worker?" Michael grinned, closing the door. "This is temporary. What did you bring?" Tom threw the folder on the table, his glasses sliding down to the tip of his nose. "Final documents. Sign, and I'll take them to court." "But Michael, are you sure? Emily called me yesterday. She panics and says she wants to talk. Maybe it's worth it." "No," Michael interrupted, his voice as hard as concrete. "She made a choice. Me too." Tom sighed, rubbing the back of his head. "Okay, man, but divorce is not a blueprint that can be redrawn. Are you ready for this to be the end?" Michael looked at the folder, his fingers tightening around his mug. And he remembered Emily in their kitchen, her laugh when she spilled sauce on his shirt. Then he thought it was forever. But now she was out there somewhere with David and Lindsay, and the thought cut like a rusty knife. "I'm ready," he said, opening the folder. He signed the papers, his signature as sharp as an axe blow. Send it. Tom nodded, taking the documents. Fine, but Michael, don't dig yourself into this hole. Go have a beer and talk to someone. You are not alone, understand? Michael nodded, but his thoughts were far away. He wasn't alone, but he felt like he'd lost half of himself. And yet he knew what he did was right. Marriage is about two people, not a crowd. He couldn't live any other way. The bar was loud, smelling of beer and fried wings. Michael sat at the bar, his fingers twirling a bottle of beer, while the television overhead blared a football game. He came here after meeting Tom, not because he wanted to get drunk, but because the silence of the apartment was stifling. Here, amid the hum of voices and the clinking of glasses, he could pretend that everything was normal. Michael Crow himself. A voice came from behind him. He turned around to see Kevin, his old friend from school, with a beer belly and a balding top. Kevin plopped down on the chair next to him, his smile wider than the stadium. Damn, how many years? Where have you been? Michael shrugged, taking a sip of his beer. Job. Life. You know it yourself. Kevin ordered a beer, his eyes narrowed. I heard you moved out from Emily. Is it true? You were like Romeo and Juliet, only without the poison. Michael clutched the bottle, his jaw tense. Is it true? We didn't get along. Kevin whistled, shaking his head. Didn't get along? Come on, Michael. Emily is on fire. What did she do that made you run away into some hole? Michael looked at him. His eyes were cold, but a storm was raging inside. He didn't want to speak, but the words rushed out. She wanted to share with us. With another couple. She said it would revive our marriage. I said I don't play such games. Kevin froze, his beer stopping halfway to his mouth. Seriously? Is this like in those shows? God, Emily always had a spark, but this is wild. Wild, Michael agreed, his voice muffled. I gave her a chance to stop. She didn't stop, so I left. Kevin put the bottle down, his face becoming more serious. Listen, man, I get it, it's fucked up. But maybe you got carried away. Emily, she's not a stranger. Talk to her. Maybe she's just confused. Women, sometimes talk nonsense, but then they regret it. Michael shook his head, his fingers gripping the bottle until the glass creaked. She's not confused, Kev. She wanted it. I wanted another man, another woman, a whole damn party. And I believe in marriage. Real. 2, not 3 or 4. Kevin leaned closer, his voice becoming quieter. Clear. You're right, marriage is sacred. But Michael, life is not a blueprint. Sometimes you need to adjust the corners to make sure everything stays in place. Emily loves you. She may have slipped, but it's not the end. Come back and talk. Don't cut from the shoulder. Michael looked at him, his eyes were like steel. I'm not cutting, Kev. I stand for what I believe in. She chose her path. I chose mine. And my way is not to share my wife with just anyone. Kevin leaned back, raising his hands. Okay, I understand. You're like a rock man. But, rocks sometimes crack. Think about whether you are too tough. Love is not only about principles. Michael didn't answer. He took a sip of beer, but the taste was as bitter as his thoughts. Kevin was right, principles don't keep you warm at night. But they were what kept him afloat as Emily went off into her new world. He could not become a person who turns a blind eye to betrayal. Couldn't become smaller than he is. Kevin changed the subject, chatting about football, but Michael only listened with half an ear. His gaze fell on the phone lying on the counter. 3 voice messages. He knew Emily was there, screaming, crying, begging. But he didn't want her words. I didn't want her excuses. He picked up the phone, his finger hovering over the messages icon. Kevin noticed, his eyebrows raised. Are you going to listen? He asked. Michael shook his head. No. Enough. He hit delete, one message after another, without opening it. The screen went dark, and Michael felt the weight in his chest ease slightly. He didn't know if it was strength or stubbornness, but it was his choice, and he will live with him. You're tough, Crow, Kevin said, shaking his head, but there was respect in his voice. I hope you know what you're doing." Michael looked at him, his lips twitching into a faint smile. "I hope so too." He finished his beer, threw the bill on the counter, and stood up. The bar was buzzing, life went on, but Michael felt separate from it all. He was alone, but he was whole, and that was more than he could say about his marriage. The coffee shop on the corner smelled of freshly ground coffee and cinnamon, but Emily barely noticed the aroma. She sat by the window, her fingers fiddling with the rim of a paper cup as the rain pattered on the glass, washing out the streets of Omaha. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, her face was without makeup. Her eyes were red from the tears she shed at night. A week has passed since that evening at the Hayes' when she crossed the line, giving herself to David and Lindsay in the hope of feeling free. But instead of freedom, she found only emptiness, cold, echoing, like their house without Michael. She sent him dozens of messages, ranging from angry to pleading, but he did not respond. His silence was worse than a scream, and it ate at her like acid. Emily looked at the door, her heart jumping as Lindsay entered. She was wearing a dark coat, her brown hair was wet from the rain, but her eyes were as attentive as always. Emily called her here, without knowing why. Maybe to justify himself, maybe to understand what went wrong. "Emily," Lindsay said, sitting down opposite her. Her voice was soft, but with a hint of weariness. "Are you okay? You don't look very good." Emily forced a smile, but it was as fragile as glass. "I can handle it. Thank you for coming. I just needed to talk. After. Well, you know." Lindsay nodded, her fingers wrapping around her glass. "After that night, I was worried about you. You left so quickly, and—" She fell silent, her gaze became more serious. "That was too much, right?" Emily looked away, her cheeks flushed. Too much. It was all a fire that she started, thinking it would warm her, but it burned her to the ground. She remembered the Hayes bedroom, David's arms, Lindsay's touch, and her stomach lurched. "I thought it would be liberating," she said quietly, "but I feel worse than ever." Michael left and I don't know how to fix this. Lindsay leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Emily, listen. What happened? It's not your fault. Not all. David. He knows how to persuade. He makes it seem like it was your idea." Emily frowned, her fingers hovering over her glass. "What do you mean? You were there. You wanted this too." Lindsay sighed, her eyes drooping. "Did you want to? Not really. David, he loves these games. This is his passion, his obsession. I did this to save our marriage, but—" She fell silent, her lips pursed. "Sometimes I regret it. And when I saw you, I realized that you had fallen into the same trap. He made you think you wanted it." Emily felt the blood drain from her face. Trap? She remembered David, his smiles, his words, his hand on her shoulder. He was like a magnet, drawing her to the edge of the abyss. But she stepped forward herself. She wanted this. She wanted to prove to Michael that he was wrong, that she could be free, or not. "I don't blame David," she said, her voice shaking. "I agreed with myself. I thought it would revive us, but I destroyed everything. Michael, he was right. I betrayed him." Lindsay touched her hand. Her fingers were warm, but Emily shuddered. "Don't blame yourself so much. You're confused. We all lose our bearings sometimes. But Emily, you need to talk to Michael. Explain. He loves you." Emily shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "He doesn't want to talk. I called, wrote, and begged. He's like a wall, and I can't blame him. I slept with you. I chose this over him." Lindsay fell silent, her face full of sympathy. "Maybe it's not too late. Try again. Not by phone. Go to him. Show that you're sorry." Emily looked at her, her heart sank. Should I go see him? After everything? She was afraid of his eyes, cold, distant, as if she were a stranger. But Lindsay was right. She couldn't just give up. She loved him even now, even after she had destroyed everything. "I'll try," she said, her voice barely audible. "Thank you, Lindsay, for honesty." Lindsay smiled, but her smile was sad. "Just be yourself. And if you want to talk, I'm here. Not for David. For your sake. Emily nodded, her throat tightening. She finished her coffee, but the taste was as bitter as her thoughts. She stood up, pulled on her coat, and walked out into the rain, feeling the drops hitting her face. She ruined their marriage, but maybe there was still a chance. Maybe Michael will hear her. She had to try. Michael's apartment was in an old house on the outskirts, with peeling paint and creaky stairs. Emily stood at his door, her coat wet, her hair stuck to her face. She knocked, her heart beating like a drum. Silence. She knocked again, harder, her voice trembling. Michael, it's me. Please open it. The door creaked, and he appeared, wearing jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt, his eyes tired but cold as ice. He looked at her without moving, his hand clutching the joint. "What do you want, Emily?" he asked, his voice smooth but sharp as a knife. Emily swallowed, her fingers fiddling with the strap of her bag. "I want to talk. Michael, I know what I did. I was a fool. Please let me explain." He crossed his arms, his gaze unwavering. "Explain? What do you want to explain? How did you sleep with them? How did you choose them over me?" Her face flushed, tears burned her eyes. "It wasn't for you. I'm confused, Michael. I thought it would revive us. But I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Michael shook his head, his lips pursing. "Do you regret it? Emily, you're not just wrong. You stepped over everything we had. Through our vows. Through me." She stepped closer, her voice breaking. "I know. I know that I betrayed you. But I love you, Michael. I've always loved it. Please give me a chance. We can start again." He looked at her, and in his eyes there was not anger, but something worse, emptiness. "Start again? Emily, you made a choice. You chose them. I can't forget it, and I don't want to." Her chest tightened and tears streamed down her cheeks. "Michael, please. I will do everything to fix it. I won't see them anymore. I will change. Just don't push me away." He stepped back, his hand resting on the doorknob. "You made a choice," he repeated, his voice as cold as steel. "Now I'm making my own. Goodbye, Emily." The door closed, quietly, but with such finality that Emily gasped as if struck. She stood looking at the peeling paint, her body trembling. He left, not just from their home, but from her life. And it was her fault. She destroyed everything thinking she was looking for freedom, but she lost the only thing that mattered. Emily walked down the stairs, the rain lashed her, but she didn't feel the cold. She saw her mistake, but it was too late. Michael was right, she chose. The construction site hummed like a living organism. The smell of concrete, dust, and hot metal filled the air, and the roar of the excavator drowned out everything except the screams of the workers. Michael stood at the edge of the pit, his dark t-shirt stuck to his back with sweat. He checked the drawings, his pencil leaving sharp marks on the paper. 2 weeks passed after leaving Emily, and work became his anchor, the only thing that kept him from falling into the void. Here, amid the noise and chaos, he could forget her face, her voice, her betrayal. At least for a few hours. "Hey, boss!" Joe, his foreman, shouted, making his way through piles of rebar. His beard was covered with dust, but his eyes sparkled. "The guys say you're like an animal today. I fulfilled my plan 3 days in advance. Maybe you should slow down, huh?" Michael chuckled, wiping sweat from his forehead. "If I slow down, you'll start whining that we're behind." "Check the solution, Joe. Last time it was thin like soup." Joe laughed, slapping him on the shoulder. "Yes, Captain. But seriously, Michael, are you okay? It's like you live here." Michael shrugged, his gaze returning to the drawings. "Work doesn't wait, and I feel better here than at home." Joe nodded, his face becoming more serious. "Understand. But, life is not all concrete and nails. Give yourself a break. Go to that charity construction site on Saturday. There will be a lot of people there, food, maybe even a couple of cute volunteers." Michael rolled his eyes, but the corners of his lips twitched. "Are you a matchmaker now, Joe? Construction is not a dating club." But in vain, Joe winked. "Okay, I'm going to check your precious solution. But think about it, boss. You're not a monk." Michael shook his head. But Joe's words stuck in his head. He wasn't ready for anything new, not after Emily, not after she broke his trust. But the thought of a charity construction project didn't seem so bad. It was work, and he knew how to do it. And maybe Joe was right, he needed to get out of this loop, where every day was a copy of the previous one. Saturday was clear, and the sky was blue, like when Michael was a child when he helped his father fix the barn. The charity construction took place on the outskirts of Omaha, where the local community was assembling a house for a family who had lost their home in a fire. The field was buzzing with voices, workers, volunteers, children running around with plastic hammers. Michael arrived early, his pickup parked next to a pile of lumber. He put on an old baseball cap and got to work helping frame the wall. His team was here, and their respect for him was evident in every nod, every "boss, what's next?" "Hey, be careful with that beam," he shouted as two volunteers almost dropped the beam. "This is not Lego." One of them, a guy in a bright t-shirt, laughed. "Calm down, boss. We are learning." Michael shook his head but smiled. It was easy here, no complicated drawings, no contracts, just people who wanted to help. He raised the hammer, driving in a nail, when a voice spoke nearby, soft but firm. "You hit well, but maybe it's worth giving newbies a chance." Michael turned around and saw a woman about 30 with short blonde hair and freckles on her nose. Her jeans were covered in dust, and she held a screwdriver in her hands like a weapon. Her eyes, blue and lively, looked at him with slight mockery. "Newbies," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Only if they know that they hit a nail with a hammer, not with their head." She laughed. Her laughter was as light as the wind. "I'm Sarah, volunteer, and you seem to be in charge here." "Michael. And I'm not in charge, I'm just making sure the house doesn't collapse." He nodded at her screwdriver. "What, are you planning to turn the walls?" Sarah grinned, tossing the screwdriver in her hand. "I can do walls, I can do shelves. I'm one of those people who reads instructions, unlike some." Michael raised his eyebrows, his lips twitching into a smile. "Instructions. This is for weaklings. Real builders feel the nail in their hearts." She snorted, crossing her arms. "Oh, now I must bow to your heart. Okay, master, show me how to do it." Michael took the hammer, feeling her eyes following him. He drove the nail in with one blow, hard and precise. Sarah whistled, her eyes sparkling. "Not bad, Master Michael, but I'm still waiting for instructions." He laughed, and it was the first laugh in weeks that didn't feel forced. Sarah was light, like a breath of air, and at the same time hard, like a board under his hands. He found himself staring at her longer than necessary and quickly looked away, his neck turning red. This is not the time, he told himself. Not after Emily. But her betrayal, still burning, seemed a little further away when Sarah smiled. They worked side by side all day, exchanging jokes. Sarah turned out to be a volunteer from a local shelter, helping families find housing. Her stories of children who drew her cards, of old people sharing their last cookies, were simple but warm. Michael listened, occasionally adding his own comments, and felt something come to life within him. Not love, not passion, just hope, fragile, like the first grass after winter. "So, master," said Sarah when they finished the wall, "are you always so serious, or is it just at a construction site?" Michael leaned against the beam, wiping off his sweat. "Serious. You haven't seen me with the drawings yet. I'm generally a tyrant there." She laughed, her freckles dancing. "Tyrant, you say? Then I have to see you in action. Maybe next time?" Her tone was light, but something flashed in her eyes, not a hint, but a question. Michael felt his heart skip a beat. He wanted to say yes, but the image of Emily, her laughter, her betrayal flashed in his head like a warning. "Maybe," he said, his voice cautious, "unless you run away from my instructions." Sarah grinned, her gaze warm but not oppressive. "I'm not one to run away. But I'll think about it, master." She went off to help another group, her blonde hair flashing through the crowd. Michael watched her leave, his fingers clenched around the hammer. He was not ready, not for her, not for something new. But her laughter, her lightness left a mark, like a mark on fresh concrete. He shook his head, going back to work. Hope was dangerous, but it was there and he couldn't ignore it. That evening, Michael sat in his pickup truck, watching the sunset turn the sky orange. The construction fell silent, the volunteers dispersed, but Sarah's voice still sounded in his head. He pulled out his phone, the screen showing a missed message from Emily. "Michael, please talk to me." His finger hovered over the delete button. He didn't respond, but he didn't delete it, not today. He started the engine, his thoughts confused. Sarah was the spark, but Emily was the fire that still smoldered in his heart. He didn't know how to move forward, but for the first time in weeks, he wanted to try. Tom's office. A narrow window let in gray light, illuminating a metal table littered with folders and two chairs with worn upholstery. Michael was sitting on one of them, his hands on his knees, his fingers gripping the hem of his jeans. Emily sat opposite him, her dark hair pulled back into a tight ponytail, her face pale, without makeup, her eyes red, as if she hadn't slept in a week. Between them lay a folder of divorce papers, open to a page with their names printed in black and white. This was the end, not loud, not violent, but cold, like concrete in winter. Michael looked at the folder, avoiding her gaze. He felt her presence like an electric charge, but did not want to see her face. The last time, at his apartment, she begged and cried, but he closed the door. Now he was here to close the last one. His heart ached, but his determination was stronger. Emily had chosen her path, a night with David and Lindsay, her freedom, and he couldn't live with it. I couldn't be a person who forgives betrayal. Tom walked in, his jacket wrinkled as always. He coughed as he sat down at the table. "Well, guys," he said, his voice businesslike, but with a hint of awkwardness. "Everything is ready. Sign here and here. If there are no questions, I will file documents with the court today." Emily looked up, her fingers trembling as she gripped the pen. "Tom, can we have a minute? Alone?" Michael tensed, his jaw clenching. He looked at Tom, hoping that he would refuse, but Tom just shrugged. "Certainly. I'll be outside the door. Call me when you're done." The door closed, and the silence became deafening. Michael felt her gaze burning him, but he looked at the folder, at his hands, at anything but her. "Michael," Emily began, her voice hoarse, as if she had swallowed glass. "Please look at me." He didn't move, his fingers gripping his jeans tighter. "Speak, Emily. We don't have much time." She swallowed, her breathing uneven. "I know you hate me, and I deserve it. But I have to say, I'm so sorry. I was a fool. I thought that this would make us closer, but I destroyed everything." Michael clenched his teeth, his chest tightening. He heard her words the same as in the messages, the same as at his door. But they were empty, like the wind in an abandoned house. He forced himself to look up, and her face hit him like a hammer. She was the same Emily, green eyes, soft features, but now there was something broken about her, like a cracked mirror. "You're sorry," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "What difference does it make, Emily? You slept with them. You chose them. Words do not cancel elections." Her eyes filled with tears, her lips trembled. I know what I did, but it was a mistake, Michael. I'm confused. I thought it would revive us, but I lost you. Please give me a chance. I will do everything to fix it." Michael shook his head, his hands clenched into fists. He remembered her at the Hayes house in a red dress, with a beaming smile, ready to step over their vows. He remembered his pain, his rage, his silence, which allowed her to think that he agreed. But now he was not silent. "To correct," he said, his voice as cold as steel. "How will you fix the fact that I see you with them every night? How will you fix the fact that I don't trust you anymore? You're not just wrong, Emily. You broke us." She gasped, her hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Michael, I love you. I've always loved it. I was stupid, but that doesn't mean it's over. We can start again. Please." He looked at her, and for a second his resolve wavered. He loved her so much that it still hurt like an open wound. But love was not the glue. She couldn't mend what she had broken. He remembered Sarah at the construction site, her easy laugh, her freckles, and realized that he wanted to move forward, even if it was scary. Emily was his past, and he couldn't go back. "No," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "We can't. You made a choice. Now I'm making my own." Emily sobbed, her hands falling to the table, her fingers clenching the handle. "Michael, don't do this. Don't cut me off. I can't live without you." He stood up, his chair creaking on the linoleum. "You are already without me, Emily. You were without me that night. Goodbye." He took the pen and signed the documents, his signature as sharp as a blow. He didn't look at her, but he felt her tears, her pain, and it cut him like a knife. But he couldn't stop. He put down his pen and walked out without looking back. The door closed behind him, and Tom, standing in the corridor, looked at him with sympathy. "Are you okay?" Tom asked, his voice soft. Michael nodded, even though it was a lie. "Hand over the papers. I want this to end." He walked down the stairs, his boots clicking on the concrete. The air outside was cold and smelled of rain. He stopped, looking at the gray sky, and felt the heaviness in his chest mixed with something new, not joy, but freedom. He lost Emily, lost their marriage, but he saved himself, and it was more than he could have hoped for. The house was half empty, like a shell from which life had been taken out. The living room where Emily and Michael had once danced to old records now seemed like a cave sofa without his favorite blanket, shelves without his books, walls without his laughter. Emily sat at the kitchen table, her fingers fiddling with a piece of paper covered in uneven handwriting. Letter to Michael. She wrote it half the night, pouring out regret, pain, love, but now, in the cold morning light, it looked pitiful, like a plea that he would not hear. She folded the paper, put it in a drawer, and closed her eyes. He left. Their marriage ended in a lawyer's office, signed with documents she still saw in her dreams. And it was her fault. Emily stood up, her slippers scuffing on the wooden floor. She walked into the bedroom, where the bed was too big for one. His pillow was still in place, but the smell of his cologne had dissipated. She opened the closet, and her gaze fell on his old shirt, forgotten in a hurry. She took it and pressed it to her face, but the fabric smelled only of washing powder. Tears burned her eyes, but she clenched her teeth. Crying no longer helped. She had destroyed their marriage by chasing the illusion of freedom, and now she had to live with it alone, in the house that was their dream. The phone vibrated on the table, revealing her colleague's name, Mary. Emily wiped her face and answered, her voice hoarse. "Mary, hi. What's happened?" "Emily, where are you?" Mary's voice was sharp, but with a hint of concern. "You didn't come to the presentation. The boss is furious. This is the third time in a month." Emily looked at her watch. Noon. She forgot. Again. The work that had once been her pride now seemed meaningless, like running in place. "Sorry," she said, her fingers clenching the phone. I'm out of shape. Mary, I quit." Mary gasped. A rustling sound was heard in the receiver, as if she had sat down. "Are you resigning? Emily, are you serious? You're the star of the department. What's happened? Is it because of Michael?" Emily closed her eyes, her throat tightening. "Not only. I can't do this anymore. I need something new. Something that makes sense." Mary fell silent, then her voice softened. "Listen, I understand that this is hard for you. Divorce is hell. But quitting your job, where will you go? Have you even thought about it?" Emily looked at the box where the letter lay. I want to help people. Don't sell them insurance, but really help them. Maybe psychology. I don't know yet, but I can't stay here." Mary sighed, her voice full of sympathy. "Oh my God, Emily, you've always been stubborn. But if that's what you need, do it. Just don't disappear, okay? Call if you want coffee." Emily smiled, her eyes wet. "Thank you, Mary. I'll call." She hung up, her heart pounding. The dismissal was impulsive, but correct. She couldn't keep pretending that her life hadn't changed. She had destroyed her marriage, lost Michael, and now she needed to find herself not for him, but for herself. Emily sat at her laptop, the screen glowing with a local college page. Psychology courses. She leafed through the description, her fingers trembling. This wasn't just a learning curve, it was a chance to understand why she did what she did. Why did she chase the illusion instead of fighting for their love? She dialed the reception number, her voice hesitant. "Hello," she said when a woman's voice answered. "I want to enroll in psychology courses. Entry level." "Great," the woman replied, her tone businesslike but warm. "Name and what brought you to us?" Emily swallowed, her fingers gripping the phone. "Emily Crow. Emily Wilson. I, I want to help people. I went through a difficult period, and I think this will help me understand myself and others." The woman paused, then her voice became softer. "That's a great goal, Emily. We have a group starting in a month. Want to sign up?" "Yes," Emily said, her voice firmer. "Sign me up." She hung up the phone, her chest light, as if she had dropped a stone. It was a small step, but it was hers. Not for Michael, not for Hayes, but for herself. She closed the laptop and returned to the table where the letter lay. She took it, her fingers trembling. "Michael," it began, "I don't know if you'll read this, but I have to say, I destroyed us. I thought I was looking for freedom, but I've lost the only thing that mattered. You were my home, and I burned it down. I'm sorry, not for the sake of forgiveness, but because I see who I could be next to you. I love you, always will, but I know you're gone, and I accept it. I'm sorry." Emily reread the words, her eyes wet. She wanted to send him away, wanted him to know how much she was sorry, but she knew he wouldn't answer. He told her in the lawyer's office, "Words don't overturn an election." And he was right. She folded the letter, put it in the drawer, and closed it. It wasn't for him. This was for her a farewell to what she had lost and a step towards who she could become. Construction hummed under the scorching Omaha sun, the air thick with dust and the smell of freshly cut wood. Michael stood at the frame of the future house, his t-shirt soaked with sweat and his baseball cap casting a shadow on his tanned face. He checked the beams, his pencil making quick marks on the drawings. Work was his refuge, but today there was something else about it, a lightness he hadn't felt in months. Maybe it was about the project, a charity home for a needy family. Maybe in the people around, whose voices mixed with the roar of saws. Or maybe it was Sarah, who was now carrying the board with such determination as if she was going to build a house alone. "Hey, master," Sarah shouted, her blonde hair falling out from under her bandana. Her jeans were covered in dust, and the freckles on her nose seemed brighter under the sun. "Is this beam crooked, or did it seem to me?" Michael walked over, wiping his hands on his jeans. He looked at the board she was holding and grinned. "It's not crooked, you're just holding it incorrectly. Here, look." He took the board, turned it, and showed how to level it. Their hands touched, and Michael felt a slight pang in his chest, not fear, but something warm, dangerous. He stepped back, his cheeks flushed. "You're learning," he said, trying to sound casual. "Soon you'll be telling me what to do." Sarah snorted, crossing her arms. "I'm already pointing out, master. You're just not listening." She nodded at the drawings. "What's next? Walls or floors?" Michael smiled. Her sass was like a sip of water in the heat. "Walls. But if you mess up, I'll make you redo everything." "Oh, what threats," she laughed, her blue eyes sparkling. "Come on, tyrant, show me how it's done." They worked side by side, driving nails, leveling beams, exchanging jokes. Sarah wasn't just a volunteer, she knew how to hold a hammer, and her confidence was impressive. Michael found himself looking at her more than necessary, at her smile, at the way she brushed her hair out of her face. After Emily, he thought he wouldn't be able to feel that way again, that warmth, that spark. But Sarah was different. Not a fire, but a beacon, calling but not burning. By midday, they had moved to the community center that Sarah helped run. It was an old building with peeling paint, but there was life inside. The walls were covered with children's drawings, the tables were covered with books and crafts. Michael agreed to help with the renovations, replacing rotten floors and fixing windows. Now he stood in the main room, measuring boards while Sarah sorted the tools. "Do you really think this place can be saved?" he asked, nodding towards the cracked ceiling. looks like it's older than me. Sarah grinned, handing him the screwdriver. Older, but strong. Like some people. She winked. Besides, there aren't just walls here. This is a home for those who have nowhere to go. I won't give up until it shines. Michael looked at her. His heart trembled. Her passion for this place, for the people she helped, was contagious. Are you always so stubborn? He asked, driving in a screw. She laughed, her hands freezing on the box of nails. Only when it's worth it. And you, always so serious, or is it just a mask? Michael fell silent, his fingers tightening around the screwdriver. Seriously. After the divorce, he felt like a foundation that had cracked, but was holding together. He didn't want to open up, but her gaze, warm, not oppressive, pulled him like a magnet. Not a mask, he said finally, his voice quieter. It's just life has been hard lately. Divorce. I didn't think I'd get to this point. Sarah stopped, her eyes becoming more serious. Divorce? This. Must be hard. Do you want to tell me? Michael shrugged, his gaze falling to the floor. He didn't talk about it except to Joe and Kevin, but with Sarah the words seemed easier. My wife, she wanted something else. Other people. She said it would revive us. I said marriage is about two. She didn't agree, so I left. Sarah nodded, her face full of sympathy, but without pity. It's her choice, Michael, and yours. Not everyone can stand up for their principles like that. It's strong. He looked at her, his throat tightening. Strongly, he felt broken, but her words were like a beam supporting him. And you? He asked, changing the subject. Why are you here, cleaning floors and carrying boards? It doesn't look like you need it. Sarah smiled, but her smile was sad. Need to. My brother. He died 3 years ago. I tried to save him, but I couldn't. Now I'm here, helping those who can still get up. This is my way of, I don't know, atonement or something. Michael fell silent, her words hitting like a hammer. He saw her pain, as real as his own, and it brought them closer together like an invisible thread. It's not your fault, he said quietly. You do more than many. She shrugged, her eyes sparkling. Maybe, but I still try. How are you with your houses? We build even when everything is falling apart. He nodded, feeling something shift within him. She understood him, not just the words, but the essence. They continued to work, but now their silence was warm, like a shared secret. Michael felt her next to him, her shoulder accidentally touching his, her laugh when he dropped the nail. And for the first time in months, he wasn't afraid of this feeling. By evening, the center became quiet and the workers dispersed. Michael and Sarah sat on the porch, sipping water from plastic bottles. The sky was orange, the sunset colored the clouds. Michael looked at her, her profile, her freckles, and realized that he did not want this day to end. Sarah, he said, his voice hesitant, as if he were walking on thin ice. Do you eat sometimes? She laughed, her eyebrows rising. Eating. Well, you know, a couple times a day. And what? He blushed, rubbing the back of his head. I was wondering, maybe we could have dinner tomorrow. Nothing special, just food. Sarah looked at him, her eyes sparkling. Dinner, Master Michael? What is this, a date? He coughed, his cheeks burning. Don't call it that. Just two people, food, conversation. She grinned, her hand touching his elbow, lightly but enough to make his heart jump. Okay, not a date. I'm in. But if you order pizza with anchovies, I'll run away. Michael laughed, and this laugh was free, like the wind. No anchovies. I promise. She stood up. Her bandana slid down to reveal her disheveled hair. Then see you tomorrow, master. And don't be late. She left, her steps faded, and Michael remained on the porch, looking at the sunset. Michael's apartment still looked like a temporary shelter. Bare walls, cardboard boxes in the corner, a lonely sofa on which he slept more often than on a mattress. But today the smell of freshly brewed coffee was in the air, and on the table there was a vase of daisies, a gift from the team for a successful project. Michael stood at the mirror, straightening the collar of his shirt, his fingers unusually clumsy. He hadn't dressed up like that since. He didn't want to think about the past. Tonight was an evening with Sarah, their first not date, as she joked, and his heart was beating faster than he wanted to admit. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was a start, and he was willing to try. There was a knock on the door, sharp, almost desperate. Michael frowned, his hand frozen on the button. Sarah shouldn't have come so early. He walked to the door, opened it, and his breathing stopped. Emily stood on the threshold. Her hair was disheveled, her coat was wet from the rain, and in her hand she clutched a crumpled piece of paper, a letter he had never seen. Her eyes, red from tears, looked at him with such pain that he felt old wounds opening. "Emily," he said, his voice low, almost hoarse, "what are you doing here?" She swallowed, her fingers trembling as she clutched the letter. "Michael, I found this." She picked up the sheet, her voice breaking. "I wrote to you, but didn't send it. I had to say, I had to try again." Michael stepped back, his hand remaining on the doorknob. He didn't want to let her in, not into the apartment, not into his life. But her face, so familiar and so alien, held him like a chain. "Speak," he said, his tone cold, but not cruel, but quickly. Emily stepped closer, her eyes pleading. "I know you hate me, and I deserve it. I ruined us, Michael. I thought I wanted freedom, but I had lost the only thing that mattered. I'm sorry, not for your sake, but for my own sake, because I see what a fool I was." Michael clenched his teeth, his chest tightening. He remembered her in the lawyer's office, her tears, her words, "I love you." Then he left because he couldn't forgive. Now she stood here with this letter, and her pain was real, but she could not change the past. "Emily," he said, his voice smooth but firm. "I heard it. In the office, at my door, in your messages. But regret doesn't erase what you did. You slept with them. You chose them." Her face was distorted, tears flowed down her cheeks. I know I can't undo this. But I've changed, Michael. I quit my job, I took classes, I'm trying to be better. For your own sake, but also for our sake. Please give me a chance. I love you. Always loved." Michael looked at her, and for a second he saw the old Emily, the one who laughed when they painted the swing in the yard, the one who held his hand when his company almost went bankrupt. But Emily left, and her place was taken by the woman who betrayed him, who chose David and Lindsay over their vows. He didn't hate her, but he couldn't bring her back. "I'm not that person, Emily," he said softly but forcefully. "The Michael who could forgive left when you made your choice. I don't hate you, but I can't be with you. Not now." She gasped, her hand going to her mouth, the letter crumpled in her fist. "Michael, please, don't say that. We can start again. I will do everything to prove." "Enough," he snapped, his voice firm, but not angry. "You can't prove something that's already broken. I'm moving forward, Emily, and you need the same." Her shoulders slumped, tears dripped onto the floor. She opened her mouth to say something else, but there was another knock on the door light, confident. Michael turned, his heart leaping. "Sarah." He opened the door, and there she stood, wearing jeans and a blue blouse, her blonde hair shining under the light from the hallway lamp. Her smile was warm, but she froze when she saw Emily. "Oh," Sarah said, her eyebrows raised. "Am I at the wrong time?" Michael shook his head, his hand still holding the door. "No, you're on time." He looked at Emily, his gaze soft but final. Emily was leaving. Emily looked at Sarah, her face pale. She understood not just Michael's words, but his look, his tone, his new life. She stepped back, her fingers clutching the letter like a life preserver. "Goodbye, Michael," she whispered, her voice breaking. She turned and walked out, her footsteps fading on the stairs. Michael closed the door, his hand shaking. He felt her pain, her loss, but he couldn't bear it. He made a choice not out of malice, but out of growth. He looked at Sarah, who stood with her arms crossed, her eyes full of questions, but not judgmental. "It was," she began, but he raised his hand. "My ex," he said, his voice quiet. She wanted to talk. "It's over." Sarah nodded, her smile returning, light but warm. "Fine. Because I'm hungry and you promised dinner without anchovies. Michael laughed, and it was a free laugh, as if he had lifted the last stone from his chest. No anchovies. Let's go. He took the jacket, his hand touched her shoulder, unobtrusively, but enough to feel the warmth. Emily was the past, the pain he let go of. Sarah was real, not a promise, but a possibility, and he was ready to step into it. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.